It was the Instagram post that sent shockwaves through the recruiting world yesterday. Was Nyckoles Harbor in Boulder? His dad says no, but could Colorado actually be in play for the number one athlete? And speaking of number one, the top prospect in 2024 joins the show. Dylan Raiola gives us the latest on his recruitment. Plus, we've got the biggest names in next year's class all gathering in Miami. A full recap as the college football recruiting show starts right now. Blair Angulo is back. I'm Emily Proud. Submit your comments in the chat and we will answer them at the end of the show. Shout out Tyler Chambers calling us the best recruiting show on the internet. So we got a lot to live up to on today's show. Let's go ahead and get it rolling with the headlines. And the top uncommitted and unsigned prospect of the 2023 cycle is nearly a week out from decision day, and Nyckoles Harbor is keeping us all on our toes. Despite the Instagram post tagging Boulder, Colorado, RC Wiltfong says he's not visiting Colorado. But Blair, how can we ever rule out Dion and the Buffs?
Yeah, Emily, we can be sure that other contenders are also on high alert, with primetime now seemingly in the mix for Nyckoles Harbor. Whether or not they land a high-profile player like Harbor, I don't think it matters. It's generating attention, and it's unquestionably captivating. It's exactly why a Power 5 school needed to take a chance on Dion.
All right, the man who clarified the confusion, Steve Wiltfong, joins us momentarily. Meanwhile, Jaden Rashada visiting Arizona State this weekend. The five-star quarterback was released by Florida, opening up his recruitment. His father, Harlan, played for the Sun Devils in the early 90s, but where are you leaning here?
Well, from everything we've gathered, and according to the scoop king that is our colleague Brandon Huffman, ASU has made a huge impression. I think the Sun Devils are in a great spot after what they did this past weekend. And I know other schools are still poking around, but ASU is in a great spot, and Jaden Rashada could be the key building block for new coach Kenny Dillingham.
All right, another unsigned five-star taking it down to signing day. The top tight end, Deuce Robinson, hosting Georgia personnel yesterday. USC also set to visit later this week. How have Georgia and USC emerged as the favorites?
The relationships have been really key for Deuce Robinson. Georgia obviously has the recent tight end history, and Coach Todd Hartley is the best recruiter at that position. But USC has proximity to sell, and he's got a great relationship with a lot of the commitments already in that class. My pick remains on the Bulldogs, but I could see that recruitment going either way.
All right, to another Robinson. Ellis Robinson, the number one corner in 2024, announced he will commit on February 1st. Georgia also leading in the crystal ball for him. So what are the chances the Dogs land both Robinsons on the same day?
I think the chances are really good, but we'll wait to see how things shake out. Obviously, next week, Deuce is the number one tight end in the nation, and we would put a nice bow on the 2023 recruiting cycle, and Ellis Robinson would add to a Georgia class that already ranks number one nationally in 2024.
All right, as you just heard, we only had five-star headlines today, which means the news is, of course, picking up. Signing day must be nearing, so who else do we talk to but our director of recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, I know this story's been kind of all over the place with Nyckoles Harbor. Is he just messing with us? I mean, what's going on with the cryptic Instagram and the later clarification that you got from his father?
I can't speak for the Instagram post, but I can say that his father told 24/7 Sports that he was nowhere near Colorado, and that his son was at Archbishop Carroll High School for the day. And I do know that Oregon sent another cavalry out to the nation's capital to visit with Nyckoles Harbor. It was Dan Lanning last week going out there and meeting the family for the first time. It was several Oregon football staffers and the Oregon track coach, Jerry Shoemaker. He made the trip out there, head track coach for the Ducks, out there recruiting Nyckoles Harbor as well, ahead of this weekend's official visit, where I expect the Harbor family to get a lot of good time with Phil Knight. Oregon rolling out the red carpet for one of their top remaining targets here as they try and put the finishing touches on another top 10 recruiting class. And look, this is a young man we've talked about at length, guys. He wants to run in the next Olympics. Oregon has a track record of many Olympians. He wants to play football at the highest level. Oregon has a track record of that, and so does Dan Lanning and several of his assistant coaches on his staff. And so Oregon, I think they have some runway to continue making a move here. They're certainly putting all their cards on the table. It's a big official visit coming up as they try and make a move on Maryland. You still got South Carolina very relevant in this recruitment. Same with the Michigan Wolverines. So this is an exciting one to watch down the stretch. But Oregon's the one that has at the board moving the pieces as we record this show right now.
Yeah, and as Colorado's making or trying to make a move with Nyckoles Harbor, one player that they did make a move on, Steve, is Cormani McClain. He announced his split from Miami last Thursday. The Buffs ranked 113th nationally last season in passing yards allowed. So how big of an impact, Steve, could Cormani make for Colorado in year one under Coach Prime?
That's probably what their recruiting class ranked last year and when Deion Sanders and this staff was hired too. But now they're at number 29. They have the number 4 transfer portal class. So it's number 20 overall when you combine both of them. And, they're trying to reshape this roster right away. They got 23 transfers. They got 18 high school kids signed right now. And Cormani McClain, look, it obviously starts with Deion Sanders and his pedigree, best corner of all time, very charismatic, terrific recruiter. What he did at Jackson State, taking a program that was struggling and turned it into a contender, a conference title winner, and one that had a great culture around it and a great atmosphere and environment. Over 50,000 fans attending Jackson State football games last year. It was because of what Deion Sanders and his staff did, infusing a lot of excitement into that program. They've now instantly done that in Boulder at Colorado. There's a lot of juice around the Buffaloes. They flipped Dylan Edwards, maybe the fastest player in the country, from Notre Dame. They land a prolific receiver from Louisiana and Omarion Miller. 4-star Adam Hopkins is a former Auburn commit. And then here's Cormani McClain, the jewel of the class, right? That was at one time committed to Miami for a second straight cycle. Deion Sanders lands the number 1 corner in the country. And we're not surprised this time. Travis Hunter was a surprise because we didn't see it coming. Not that he chose to play for Jackson State, just that we didn't know it was coming till the day of. With Cormani McClain, we knew it was coming during the early signing period when he didn't sign. And I think also it was more than just Deion Sanders. Kevin Mathis being his position coach and his pedigree, just the atmosphere and environment and the excitement around Colorado's program and helping build it up. But certainly Deion Sanders having a lot to do with Cormani McClain playing his college football in the Pac-12.
Now that Cormani is committed, we often see these big-time recruits help recruit other players. I mean, not that Deion really needs any help in that department, but what can Cormani McClain's commitment do to help with landing more top talent?
Well, it just continues to show the caliber of prospects that are seriously looking at Colorado. But look, I don't think Deion Sanders needs a high school kid's help to land blue chippers. And if you look at the list of guys that are visiting this weekend for an upcoming junior day, it's some of the elite players in the country, from Ryan Wingo to Boo Carter, coming out there to see what Colorado has to offer. They're going to have a lot of offered recruits on campus. They just had offered quarterback Danny O'Neill from Indianapolis this past weekend, who they moved the needle with. This is a class that's full of excited, energetic recruiters. I mean, you see Tim Brewster and his track record. Nick Williams was one of the best off-field recruiters in America. Now he's Colorado's defensive line coach. Corey Phillips running the shop. It's just a loaded staff of good recruiters. And Deion Sanders, obviously, how charismatic he is and how he can make people feel comfortable. They're going to be in the mix for guys. And when you talk to some of these elite prospects, like I did at Miami Battle, and I know you're going to be talking to Andrew Ivins about it later, Colorado was a school mentioned about as much as any other program of, hey, we want to go visit. And so once they get guys on campus, we'll see if they can close in 2024. But I think Colorado's a program that we're going to see in the top 20 in 2024, and then, go from there as far as their recruiting ranking.
A friend of the show, Jeremy Bloom, must be really, really excited hearing all that good news about Colorado. Steve, let's stay in the 2023 class. You reported over the weekend that Jaden Rashada is involved now with TCU. He was on a visit to ASU. But what can you tell us about the Horned Frogs and their involvement with the 5-star quarterback from California?
Yeah, well, he's going to take an official visit to TCU this weekend. The Horned Frogs obviously make the college football playoff. Or he's going to take a visit to TCU this weekend. The Horned Frogs obviously make the college football playoff this year. They have the nation's number 9 scoring offense. They have one of their best recruiting classes in 24/7 sports history, sitting at number 19, Blair, but they don't have a quarterback in the fold. And talking to several sources this morning, they're really in the mix. He's got a long-standing relationship with Kendall Briles. This visit's going to be about going out there and sitting down and getting comfortable with Sonny Dykes and seeing how he meshes with Coach Dykes and the TCU program. And also, look, they're going to sell the city of Dallas and all the opportunities that you have in the Fort Worth area at TCU away from football, and they're going to try and make them comfortable. They're certainly pushing hard to add Jaden Rashada to a class that doesn't have a quarterback. I'm told the visit to Arizona State went well. His brother lives in the area, so he got a chance to hang out with him. Obviously toured the campus. They met with Kenny Dillingham and the staff and talked football a couple times. But he's known Coach Dillingham for so long that it's really just that wasn't a recruiting trip. It was more just come out, see Arizona State, see Kenny Dillingham again. And now it's how does TCU stack up with the familiarity of Kenny Dillingham? You also have Washington in the mix, but I know you guys saw today we crystal balled a 4-star quarterback, a top 100 player in 2024 to Washington today, quarterback Austin Mack. So a lot of moving parts there with the Huskies and Jaden Rashada, but they're in there, Cal's swinging. But TCU, they're in an interesting spot coming off a college football playoff, high-scoring offense, quarterback that's a Heisman finalist. Sonny Dykes instantly turning that program into a title contender, great recruiting class. So we'll see what this official visit does, or this visit. I'm losing track of if it's an official or unofficial. I just know he's going to be there, guys.
Especially with Rashada. I mean, it's been kind of all over the place there. Okay, so Blair spent the last week in Hawaii, and Steve spent the weekend in Miami. Trying my best not to be incredibly jealous.
I played golf, Blair. Did you play golf?
Okay, you guys want to have this conversation?
I was invited to a few courses, by the way, but I stuck strong and I stayed with the course of being there on assignment.
It's 28 degrees when I woke up this morning, so I hope you guys enjoyed your golf and your palm trees and all that. But you were both there for work, specifically talking about Steve here. You were there for the Battle Miami 7-on-7. Afterwards, you put in a crystal ball for the Canes to land the number 2 athlete in 24, which is JoJo Trader. And given all the other suitors he has, what's making you feel pretty confident about Miami here?
Well, conversation with him during the event, it was a school that he said he's most comfortable with. So I put in a current pulse pick. I know Miami's swinging hard here, and he's got a really good relationship with the staff and likes the trajectory of the program. And obviously, it's an opportunity for him to shine close to home and help build up a program that's been very prominent in the past. But I have that crystal ball in for Miami, but you can't sleep on Ohio State here. Expecting the Buckeyes down there again this week. He's got a great relationship with Brian Hartline and that staff. He's been to Ohio State several times. He's very comfortable with the Buckeyes and their receiver pedigree, and their on-field pedigree speaks for itself. So while I have Miami predicted there, current pulse pick, certainly not sleeping on Ohio State. And then you have Florida, Florida State, and Tennessee rounding out his top 5 right now.
Julian Sayin was also there. He's the number 4 quarterback in the 2024 class, has been committed to Alabama since November. And Steve, that hasn't stopped other schools from pursuing him. What's the latest in his recruitment and his status with Alabama?
Well, he says he's locked in with Alabama, and who wouldn't want to play with Coach Saban? And he's just maintaining relationships, long-standing relationships that he's had with coaches that have been recruiting him throughout the process. But Ohio State was recently out to see him throw. They offered a scholarship, and he likes the pedigree of the Buckeyes program. And one thing Julian Sayin said is, hey, college football, you never know what changes are going to happen there. And so, he's continuing to keep relations with schools like Ohio State and Miami. The Hurricanes are a program that's also pushing hard, looking for an elite difference maker under center on the recruiting trail. And Julian Sayin would certainly fit that bill as maybe the most accurate thrower of the football in this 2024 class. But he says he's locked in with Alabama, wants to play for Nick Saban, but, it's recruiting, so we'll continue to monitor.
So much time between now and when he will put pen to paper, so we'll see with that. Meanwhile, a few 2025 prospects there, including the number 1 quarterback, Bryce Underwood. This is likely the first time a lot of people are hearing his name on the show. So, Steve, tell the people, what do we need to know about his recruitment early on?
Well, he's a 2-time state champ for Belleville High there in Michigan already, and a guy that is one of the most highly recruited players at the position. Obviously, he's going to take a visit to Penn State this weekend. It's going to be his first time on the Nittany Lions campus, but he's been building a relationship with Danny O'Brien over there. Certainly, James Franklin is someone that's got great inroads in the state of Michigan and city of Detroit. And so he's excited to get out there and learn more about Penn State. He took several visits to Michigan during the fall. He's been to Michigan State several times. Ohio State delivered a great visit in December, so that's a program that's in the thick of it. He sees a lot of himself in C.J. Stroud and obviously loves the development that they did with C.J. Stroud. And then you have a school that I think everyone should keep an eye on with him moving forward, LSU. He's going to visit LSU the first weekend of March. Quarterbacks coach Joe Sloan has really hit it off with that family. He's been up to Belleville to meet with the staff and show Bryce Underwood how serious and excited LSU is about him as a prospect, he's going to go down to Baton Rouge and check it out. And when you talk to people close to Bryce Underwood over the last 2 years, LSU is a school that's always been mentioned as one he's super intrigued by. And then the last school, Lincoln Riley, USC. I don't think I need to go into those details of why a quarterback would be interested in playing for Lincoln Riley and the Trojans.
Yeah, they know a thing or two about Heisman trophies down in Los Angeles. Finally, Steve, you also spoke with DeCorian Moore. He's the #1 rated receiver in the 2024-25 class down in Miami. What stage of the process is he in early on in the recruitment?
Another two-time state champ with elite ball skills. He was one of the best players down there regardless of position. I asked him what school he was high on early in his process. Alabama. Loves Nick Saban. Nick Saban was just recently at his school. There's a lot of prospects at Duncanville, including electric pass rusher Colin Simmons. But Alabama's a program he wants to go visit in March. He's going to be at Oregon this weekend. So Nicholas Harbor, not the only 24/7 Sports composite 5-star that's going to be in Eugene, as DeCorian Moore will be one of several touted prospects. Also checking out Dan Lanning and the Ducks.
All right, Steve, we got one more question for you here in the chat. Jason asking, out of all the quarterbacks you've seen, I think that just means all of them ever. How does Raiola stack up? Is he worth the hype?
Yeah, well, if you look at his sophomore season, he had one of the finest sophomore seasons you can see in the country. And then obviously having seen him throw live so many times, and Blair can attest to this too, but he's a guy that accurate from all arm angle, has extremely powerful arm, mobile, can extend plays. And then he's just a football junkie that comes from terrific athletic pedigree. And so he's a young man that checks a lot of boxes, and we're certainly excited about him as our #1 ranked player in the country. And you got Georgia and Nebraska in terrific position for him. My forecast is on Georgia. I know Blair's got a story coming on his interest in Nebraska. I saw that in the back end of our database there a few minutes ago, Blair. And so the Huskers fans will be able to check that out on Huskers 247. And then you got Oregon and USC pushing as well. So Dylan Raiola is certainly one of the special prospects in this junior class.
That's right. We will keep an eye on where he lands. Steve, thank you so much for coming back from Miami. I know you probably wish you would have stayed there a little bit longer, but we do appreciate you giving us all the insight from the big weekend. Looking forward to next week for signing day. Thanks, Steve. All right, Blair, let's keep it rolling here as we tie a bow on the 2023 class. Next week, fully turn our attention to 2024. All eyes, of course, will be on 5-star quarterback Dylan Raiola. He is the #1 player in the class. We've talked about him already a lot on this show, but it's not just his top-ranked status that makes him an intriguing player to watch. He's already decommitted from Ohio State, so he is anybody's quarterback to land. Blair, you spoke with Raiola last week about that decision. Here's his response.
I just felt like I had to rethink some things, definitely take a second look. I felt like I committed a little too early, and I'm grateful for a second chance. So that's kind of where we're at now, and just make the best choice we can these next 4 or 5 months.
All right, we are lucky enough that Arizona is your specialty. So you have seen Raiola in action plenty of times, Blair. Of course, nothing is certain, but what did the Buckeyes potentially lose in this prospect?
He's a player that looks college ready already. You know, we talk about some of the big name quarterbacks that maybe need a little bit of development or a little bit of seasoning, or they need to put on weight, or they need to hit the weight room. Dylan Raiola looks like Patrick Mahomes already, physically, and he's so electric with his arm. He's got tremendous arm talent, can hit receivers in stride deep, and the ball looks small in his hands. That's another big thing that stands out to me about him, is just the control that he's able to put the ball. He's a pitcher. He's got some baseball background as well. So athletically, he checks off a lot of boxes like Steve Wiltfong just mentioned. And I think you have to like his moxie. You have to like his attitude in the huddle. That's one of the characteristics, a trait that is really important for Dylan Raiola, as he commands the presence in the huddle. And he's a terrific ball player, a guy that understands down and distance, can lower his shoulder when he needs to, and has everything that you look for in a premier quarterback.
Before people say, hey, Blair Angulo said that Dylan Raiola is Patrick Mahomes, physically, quarterback-wise, obviously still some development there, but physically he looks like Patrick Mahomes. Well, as he weighs his many options, there are a few leaders in the clubhouse. You got Georgia, Nebraska, USC, Oregon. Steve Wiltfong talked a little bit about those guys. So here is the prized QB on those 4 schools.
This is what Coach Smart does. You know, you just start with the leader. He's leading the program. What he's done for that program in the last 5 or 6 years is just it's crazy to see. He came from Alabama, and he knows what it is to win with being under Coach Saban. So it's a big deal to him. He went to Georgia, it's his alma mater. So it's a big deal bringing Georgia football back to where it needs to be. The energy he brings, the new cultures bring to the building. It's super exciting to see, and I think fans in Lincoln are super excited. And for me personally, I'm excited. My dad going there and everything that goes on to that. So just really excited to get back there, check it out, see what they have to offer, and just see what Nebraska's about. I think knowing Lincoln Riley, his track record speaks for itself. Obviously all the Heisman guys, he's won 3 of them. It's crazy. The offense he runs, the way he develops people, and just how he gets playmakers the ball from a quarterback and play calling standpoint is definitely cool to see, and definitely want to get back out there too. I think Coach Lanning has done a great job just keeping the relationship with me, and then just getting to know Coach Stein and what he did at UTSA and all the success he had there. It's just, I'm excited to get back up there and see what he has to offer, what kind of offense he runs. And I just know Oregon's got a bunch of great people in that building.
All right, we'll keep it simple. Of those 4, who's the best fit?
I think stylistically, when you think about the offense, it has to be Georgia. The way they put quarterbacks in a position to succeed, they get the ball out quickly, they get the ball downfield, they get the ball to their playmakers. Dylan Raiola is able to do all of that. And the Bulldogs haven't signed a 5-star quarterback since 2018. That was Justin Fields, at least according to the 24/7 Sports rankings. So when we think about all the talent that Kirby Smart is able to attract, that quarterback piece is the big missing component, and Dylan Raiola would be huge. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Nebraska. I think that's a really, really good fit. I would consider them option 1A at the moment in terms of fit because of what Matt Rule is trying to build there in Lincoln. The connections with his family. His uncle is the offensive line coach. His dad played there. He's been there a number of times. I think he has the connection with the fan base already and understands what it means to be a Nebraska Cornhusker. And when you think about priorities, you think about targets in this 2024 class, I don't think there's a more important prospect for a school than Dylan Raiola is for Nebraska.
Wow. All right. I'll remind you guys here, too, if you have any questions, please submit them in the chat. I see our friend Steve Wiltfong has stuck around, is answering some of your questions, but we will tackle some of them later in the show. I got one more for you on Raiola here. We're a little less than a year away from the 2024 class putting pen to paper, so, of course, plenty of time for him to make a decision. But, Blair, what did he tell you about his future plans, maybe some visits and a timeline for his decision?
Yes, it sounds like he will be taking official visits this spring and summer and wants to come off the board ahead of his senior season. So I'm anticipating a timeline of 4 to 5 months. He's going to be really active in the offseason, going out to schools. He will be competing at the Elite 11. I know that's an event that he really wants to continue to improve on and maybe get to be able to, maybe recruit some other players and start talking to other guys that could potentially join him wherever he goes. But for him, it's really important to continue his football training and then hit some of those schools. He wants to get out to USC, wants to get out to Oregon, Nebraska, and Georgia one last time, and then take officials wherever he needs to, and then comes off the board, ahead of the summer, and he can just kind of focus on being a key recruiter for whichever school he chooses.
All right, let's keep the 2024 talk rolling. The Battle Miami 7-on-7 tournament showcased some of the best young talent this past weekend and gave us a great picture of who we'll be talking about on this show for the next year. And we told you earlier, Steve Wiltfong was there, but you know what? One director is not enough. Our director of scouting, Andrew Ivins, was also in attendance and is now here to talk to us all about it. Andrew, before we talk about the individual players, though, just overall, how important is this event as you really start to focus on 2024?
Well, we are closing the book on the class of 2023 with signing day next week, right? And then we open it right up for the class of 2024. In this event, there was kids from around the country. I think it was 5 of our top 10 ranked corners in the class of 2024, 4 of the top 10 ranked wide receivers, 4 of the top 10 ranked athletes, and then you had the number 3 quarterback throwing, and then there was a bunch of guys we had never even heard of before. So this is a key evaluation for us, or kind of an introduction where we can size them up, see some different guys move around. And when you get all these guys in the same setting, it's easy to stack and piece them apart and see what this guy's able to do in certain situations. So it's a great event. It's one of a kind, and I think it's really the start of the off-season camp/tournament circuit. This has been, we're in year 4 now, and I think it's only going to get bigger in years to come.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm on the opposite coast, and I have recruits from up and down the West region that are always thinking and talking about that battle event in Miami. Let's start with some names and begin with the alpha dog from the event, Jeremiah Smith. He's the top receiver in the 2024 class. What separates him from his peers?
He was my alpha dog after those 2 days, and Jeremiah Smith, it's someone we've been talking about for well over a year now, some guy we've been tracking. I think with him, the thing that stands out is just how he moves for someone his size, and then also how much size he has put on. I've always compared him to kind of a young puppy. You see his hands, his feet, and you know he's going to get big. Well, he's starting to get big, and I think he's probably up to 190 pounds now. He was matched up with some elite defensive backs. You see it right there on the screen, a corner committed to Clemson, and he creates separation. So he's wide receiver 1 for us. I think there's a good chance he's going to go wire to wire as the top wide receiver in the class. And we've been struggling to find a player comparison. And I think Julio Jones, as crazy as that sounds, might work for Jeremiah Smith when we talk about body, how he's built, how he can work the route tree. So excellent weekend for Jeremiah Smith. And really the big thing is we've been talking about what Ohio State did at wide receiver in 2023, getting Brandon Ennis, Noah Rogers, Carnell Tate, Bryson Rogers, Jelani Thurman, the tight end. Well, guess what? Jeremiah Smith's also on the way. He's headed to Zone 6, and there's a chance he might be the best of the bunch.
Yeah, my jaw is still on the floor after seeing that one-handed diving grab in the end zone. I'm sure you saw a lot of that this weekend. He looks like an exciting prospect. But how about the guys passing him the football? You said a few quarterbacks stood out to you, like Julian Sayin, the Alabama commit. He's number 4 in the class, and Wiltfong just caught us up on his recruitment. But from a scouting standpoint, what was he like to watch in person?
First thing that jumps out to me about Sayin is his size. You know, you watch him on film. It's a little grainy. You're from a distance there on huddle, and you don't really know how big he is. I remember midway through his junior season, that's what I wrote down in my notes. How big is he? Need to see him in a 7-on setting. Well, I saw Julian in person. He was playing for Team Raw, which was kind of an all-star team assembled of kids from around the country, and he aces the eye test. I mean, he is over 6'1", pushing 200 pounds. And to me, I'm always looking for quarterbacks with big frames. You're going to play in the SEC. You're going to take some hits. And if you make it to Sundays, we know those highly paid pass rushers are going to get after you as well. So I thought Julian was good, threw an accurate football, kind of struggle at times with consistency, but he's playing with some new wide receivers on a new team. And I'll finish with this on Julian Sayin. I saw Eli Holstein at this same event 2 years ago. I saw Dylan Lonergan play the first game of his senior season. Those were both my first live evaluations of those two. After seeing Julian Sayin for the first time, I like him more than those other guys. And if I have to make a guess about who might be QB1 for Alabama 2-3 years down the line, my money right now is on Julian Sayin. And I'm excited to track him over the next few months as we get into those camp circuits, Elite 11, and all that stuff, because I think he's going to probably have a big senior season.
Yeah, really composed in the pocket and always seems to be in control, Andrew. That's something that stands out to me about Julian Sayin. The battles in the SEC that Julian Sayin will be having will be epic. One of those players is Colin Hurley. He's committed to LSU, was previously classified to 2025. He is now a 2024 prospect. What impressed you about Colin Hurley this past weekend?
Two things. Number one, the arm strength. He has a cannon. I wish I had a radar gun out there, or we got one of Steve Wiltfong's when he coaches T-ball, and we're tracking how fast that pigskin was going, because I think it was probably topping out at 60 miles per hour. He can whip it all around the field. He is not afraid to challenge tight windows. And with Colin, in the past, we've kind of wondered about how tall he is. Is he under 6 foot? I thought he looked over 6 foot. And again, sticking with the theme of frames, he is well put together, a big individual. Another guy that I think, struggled at times to kind of piece it all together from drive to drive. But to be honest, this was an impressive showing for Colin Hurley. He might not have been a top performer, but this was a step, I think, in the right direction. He's coming off a well, it was a sophomore campaign, but it's a junior campaign in which he completed just 53% of his passes. You would like to see that number go up. And again, he's someone we're going to be tracking as we get into these Elite 11 regionals. We'll see if he makes the Elite 11 finals. But I liked what I saw out of Colin Hurley, the LSU-bound signal caller. He just needs to get as many reps as he can in as possible. Remember, he's missing out on an entire year of high school football, and those are really important when it comes to development. So we'd like to see him playing this 7-on-7.
All right, let's go to the other side of the ball. How about 4-star Zaven Brown? He is a top 10 corner in the class for modern day, but how did his play this weekend help separate him from what's looking to be a talented group of DBs in Miami?
Well, Zaven Brown, I don't think anyone really knew who he was at the tournament aside from a handful of individuals and anyone that would listen to me on the sidelines. This is a kid I saw at South Florida Express's tryouts a few weeks ago, and I was kind of in awe. I thought he was the best defensive back there when it came to his ability to change directions and open up. And then on Saturday, he shut down one side of the field, essentially. He's great as an off-man corner, very technically sound. Again, just how he moves, how he changes directions, it's very, very rare. He's number 9 right now in our cornerback rankings. I have a feeling he's going to shoot up the board. A kid at Mater Dei Academy, you turn on the tape after seeing him at one of these events going up against elite wide receivers, and the tape matches the in-person evaluation. He had 3 picks as a junior there in a very difficult conference, also broke up 5 passes. So Zaven Brown, not a name that probably a lot of recruiting fans know right now. Trust me, Ohio State, USC, all these schools are going to be battling for Zaven Brown, and he was one of my favorites over the weekend. I told him as he walked off the field, hey, I'm going to make you a name coming out of this event, and I think I've already done that. His stock is rising.
Yeah, an impressive corner. He had the assignment, Andrew, of having a matchup against Zachariah Branch early on in the season last year. And staying with the cornerbacks, you said something really interesting on the College Football Recruiting Podcast, comparing the 2023 cycle with the 2024 cycle among the cornerbacks. What makes this class special in your eyes?
I mean, it's early, right? And I said at Battle Miami, we saw 5 of the guys that we currently have ranked inside our top 10. And then if you expand that, there was some more from 20 to 30. I mean, there was probably what I would say 24 future Power 5 signees at that cornerback position there. And I know it's early, but when you look at this group, I mean, Ellis Robinson was there, Jalen Mbakwe was there, Charles Lester was there, Marcellus Williams was there. I think this group is very top heavy, and it's much better than what we saw in the 2023 cycle. We're going to finalize our top 32 rankings on Thursday, and we're only going to have 2 or 3 cornerbacks that have first-round grades on them. I wouldn't be surprised if we get 12 months from now, and as we look to tie the bow on the 2024 class, if we have 4 or 5 different corners in that group. Remember, we're always trying to steer and project towards the NFL, and if you look at the NFL, it's such a passing league right now. In this upcoming NFL draft, it sounds like 6, 7, or 8 corners could come off the board night 1 of the draft. So I think if your team missed out on an elite, shut down CB1 type here in the 2023 cycle, well, good news. The 2024 cycle looks like it's going to be overstocked with high-profile corners, and you might be able to grab someone because there's going to be plenty of guys to go around.
And sorry, guys, you can't all go to Colorado. It'll just be a few of you that get to end up in Colorado. But thank you so much, Andrew, for all that great info. Hey, if you want a little bit more Andrew in your life, well, you can listen to him and Cooper Patagna on the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. New episodes dropping every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts. Well, this time last year, all was good in Aggie land. Jimbo Fisher was finalizing a historic class with a win over Alabama in his back pocket. There were no public allegations from Nick Saban, no claims of narcissism about Saban. Yeah, it's been a year since then. To help us make sense of it all, let's welcome in Brian Perroni, the senior staff writer for GigEm247. It's been a heck of a year, but before we get into a big visit weekend in College Station, we got to talk about Jimbo. If it weren't for the unprecedented buyout number, the hot seat talk would be a lot hotter, but it's not cold by any means. So how has his potential, uncertain future affected the Aggies' recruiting efforts?
So I don't know how much that has affected it because he's got that very long-term contract with no buyout from A&M's side. So it's fully guaranteed. And I just don't think, especially with the economy right now, that Texas A&M is ready to buy him out or could. So I don't think it has affected recruiting as much as just the product on the field. A 5-7 season with the #1 recruiting class of all time was not something that kids liked seeing, and I think you saw that with the little bit of a downfall this year on signing day. There were still a couple 5-stars and multiple national top 100 guys, but nothing even close to the 2022 class.
Yeah, Brian, that class was obviously historic, and this past cycle they finished 12th, albeit with a smaller group and a smaller amount of signees. But how important will the success on the field this fall be for Jimbo and for A&M to sustain some of that recruiting success that we've seen from them in recent cycles?
Oh, very much so. You're going to have a lot of people watching Texas A&M this year, a lot more than in previous years, just to see how they do, because while the hot seat isn't necessarily hot right now, it will be if there is another season like 2022. If it's another losing season, then Jimbo, I could see Jimbo and Texas A&M coming to maybe an agreed buyout, or Texas A&M even raising the $70 million or whatever it would be at that time. So this coming class, 2024, we'll be watching very closely on the field. And I think a lot of people are, hesitant on A&M because A&M has been ranked in the top 10 preseason each of the past several years, but are much lower this year heading in the early polls. So expectations aren't as high, but recruits want to see those wins.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a good thing, because last year with all the expectations didn't quite pan out. Meanwhile, A&M fans were bracing, of course, for a lot of potential transfer portal action, not necessarily good action. In total, the Aggies lost over 20 players to the portal. First, how do you evaluate the turnover this year, and really what is Jimbo's overall portal philosophy when it comes to filling out this year's roster?
So the transfer portal has been around for a few years, but heading into this year, Texas A&M has ever only signed 2 players out of it because Jimbo would very much rather go the high school route. Last year, they signed 31 players in that record-breaking class and only brought in 1 transfer in quarterback Max Johnson. So this year, we expected a lot more. We expected that philosophy to change. But so far, Texas A&M only has three transfers in its class, with classes at A&M already having started last week and it's too late to add anybody else for this semester. So unless they add somebody in May, it's going to be 3 guys, and there haven't been any players at linebacker, which is a huge spot of need, and there's only been 1 at wide receiver when they picked up UTEP transfer Tyron Smith this past weekend, and that's also a huge need.
Now, as for this weekend's visit, we'll go to some more positive future news. The biggest name likely there was Ryan Wingo, the #4 receiver in next year's cycle. A&M not alone in wanting his services. Tennessee currently leading the crystal ball predictions. But what impression were the Aggies able to make on him this weekend?
So this is Ryan Wingo's 3rd trip to Texas A&M. He has always been a big fan, along with Tennessee and Arkansas and some of those other schools. He's always liked A&M. He came over the summer. But having Bobby Petrino now on staff as the offensive coordinator gives him a familiar face. Petrino coached his brother at Arkansas and has known the family for years. So I think that really helps A&M a ton, and getting him on campus really helped a ton. And I know he and his family both raved about the trip, and A&M felt things went well too.
Yeah, Brian, LSU commit Xavier Atkins also made it to College Station. He's been committed to the Tigers since last summer. What impression did the Aggies make, and how close could they be to potentially making, some headway there on trying to flip their SEC rival commit?
So that was a huge one that A&M got in town, is Xavier Atkins. He didn't actually technically have an offer until he showed up this week, but A&M has been recruiting him heavily for some time. He's been to campus since committing to LSU before, and he absolutely loved his trip. He was raving about the coaching staff, about the facilities, about everything. And he's moved from the state of Louisiana to Houston now. So he goes from LSU's backyard to being, about an hour and 15 minutes away from Texas A&M. So that was huge. And he saw another one of his LSU linebacker commits, Maurice Williams, was also at the junior day in the same linebacker room. So it helped him to have some familiar faces there too.
Brian, appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining the show. Hey, keep it locked into GigEm247 for all things Aggies all season and all off-season long. It has come to that time of the show where we answer your questions. Thank you, everybody, for submitting them. I saw a lot of activity in the chat. I particularly want to thank the gentleman that said that I should go scout the University of Hawaii, because I think that would be very important for us to do on the show, so I will work on funding that. In the meantime, let's start with this question from Andrew M. Any update on Roderick Pleasant ahead of signing day?
Well, when you said Andrew, I figured maybe it was Andrew Ivins asking if he could expense a radar gun. But no, Roderick Pleasant had a terrific week at the Polynesian Bowl down in Hawaii. And it does sound like it's a USC-Oregon battle, although he has a Final Five that also includes Boston College and Cal. And he likes UCLA quite a bit as well. But I think it's the Trojans right now out in front for a player that has all the tools to be an instant impact player, especially with some of the shortcomings that they had in the secondary. He could go into to that cornerback spot and fill in right away and make an impact. He's also an Olympic hopeful. He wants to make the team in 2024 in the 100-meter sprints, and he wants to podium in 2028 here in Los Angeles and in his own backyard. I think that's a huge goal that he could accomplish. And imagine this, Emily, our colleague Greg Biggins wrote about this earlier today. If you pair Roderick Pleasant, who's a dynamic 100-meter track star, with Zachariah Branch, who also intends to run track at USC, they could pair really, really well there in the 4x100 at USC. So I kind of have to side right now with the Trojans as we approach signing day next week.
Wow. I mean, picture that. That will be absolutely spectacular. We'll see what happens with him. Yeah, he's one of the few uncommitted, unsigned prospects that we look forward to finding out his destination next Wednesday. Be sure to keep it locked into the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. We will be live for most of the day, breaking it all down. Next question here from Jason H. Where does Dylan Raiola stack up in the top 2023 quarterbacks? I like it.
Yeah, so we would have to go down the list and maybe plug him somewhere in between Arch Manning, Nico Iamaleava, Dante Moore, Jackson Arnold, Malachi Nelson, Chris Vezina, and I think he belongs in the conversation right up there with the Nico Iamaleavas and with the Dante Moores. I would even go out on a limb and say that he would be able to push Arch Manning as well. If we ever saw them throw side by side at an event or at a camp or at a showcase, I would not, look away whenever Dylan Raiola is throwing. His arm is that special. He's got all the tools that you want. And when you think about him physically being able to match up with some of the prospects that are a year advanced in terms of class, you have to think that he's right there with them. And that's why he's so regarded and so coveted early on in the 2024 recruiting cycle, and why he appeared to be headed to Ohio State. So I think he's right up there. If he reclassified to 2023, I don't think anyone would bat an eye to put him in that same air as the group we just mentioned.
Wow, so that's based on right now, not just what he could be with another year under his belt. That is... Yeah,
this is a player. Yeah, I mean, this is a player that I think we would need a radar gun for. He's remarkable, and I think you have to kind of see him to believe him. And Andrew touched on it earlier with the grainy footage and the huddle. I don't think it really hits you until you're behind him and he's throwing the football and the velocity that it's coming out at, and the way he's hitting receivers and kind of the arm angles. I mentioned Patrick Mahomes earlier in terms of a physical comp, but he's got a lot of Patrick Mahomes to his game with the way he's able to kind of contort his body to make sure that the ball gets out on time. He's really athletic outside the pocket, a player that is hard to bring down. So it's going to take a couple guys to bring him down in the backfield. And he's athletic enough when the pocket collapses, he goes and charges forward and drops his shoulder and picks up 5-6 yards easy. So, he can do it with his arm, he can do it with his legs. And I think his moxie just sets him apart and puts him in a different stratosphere as well.
I love how we're a week away from signing day, and yet this entire show is just the Dylan Raiola show. I mean, that's how special this guy is, and we will be talking about him a lot over the next year. Our next question from Hannah G. If Austin Mack ends up at Washington, what are the Huskies getting at him?
They're getting a terrific player that's been on the rise here for the last few months from the state of California. Really dynamic, multi-sport athlete, has a really, really accurate arm and can make things happen downfield whether that's with his arm or with his legs. This is a fast riser who maybe wasn't getting the attention that he deserved, but if the Huskies do get him, if they get their quarterback that could potentially, be the next guy in line after Michael Penix leaves campus. This is a player who's going to be able to recruit early if he does commit and comes off the board for the Huskies. I think you have to like everything that Austin Mack would bring to Seattle.
That was a great answer. I'm sorry. There's a lot of smack talk going on in the chat right now when it comes to Rutgers. Did not expect the Rutgers talk here on the show, but be nice, people. Okay, let's keep it civil here. Let's ask one more question here from Cade P. Any update on the impact the in-homes last night made on Deuce Robinson?
Well, we haven't gotten a full update, but I can say that the order here is really interesting. Usually the school that maybe is in the lead in the clubhouse gets that last impression. They get to be able to lock in the final meeting before the door closes and Deuce Robinson sits down with his family to make a decision. Well, I think it was USC and then it was Georgia to come in on Monday night in North Phoenix to meet with Deuce Robinson. So the Georgia Bulldogs got the last chance to make an impression. Kirby Smart, Todd Hartley, a couple other coaches, and then USC was before that. So if those coaches maybe bump shoulders in the driveway heading into the home, we've seen crazier things happen, but that's what we can report is that it sounds like Georgia got the last chance with the number 1 tight end in the 2023 class.
What does Georgia even have to sell at this point? I mean, they're the ultimate scoreboard, right?
Yeah, no, they're just playing with their food, I think, right now. This is kind of how we can attribute it. They are doing whatever they want, especially at the tight end position.
Yeah.
Brandon Huffman reported earlier today that they're meeting with Walker Lyons up in Northern California. He's another 4-star tight end in the class who won't arrive on campus until 2024. He is taking a 2-year church mission beginning later this month. But yeah, they can do whatever they want at the tight end position right now. They can do no wrong. And, they're trying to battle out USC for Deuce Robinson.
Yeah, it's not just the great tight ends that have been suiting up for the Dogs. It's also the back-to-back national championships and all of that's happening. But that tells you recruiting still, you got to put the effort in, you got to put the time in, and so Kirby Smart is certainly doing that. Hey, the next time we see you will be for a special 5-star reveal show, but also on Thursday, Kavion Thunderbird will make his commitment live on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page right after we get off air about 5 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Eastern, so stay tuned for that. Hey, for Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the College Football Recruiting Show.